You are live. Hi, guys. I think I'm going to bring Stephanie in immediately. I don't know why I don't see her here. Could be a problem. Could definitely be a problem. I really don't want to do this live by myself. Let me just try again, see if I can bring her in. I still don't see her there. Okay. Let me just greet you guys. Dawn Robertson, hi there. Laurie Dearborn. Judy Isler Herod, hi from Utah. Christy Pollock, made it live finally, great. Rebecca Judson Marlow, hi there, good to see you. Sonia Stenger, how's it? Monica Ortiz from California, good to see you. Stephanie, I sent the link to you on Instagram, didn't I? Vicky Sherby, hi from Australia. Susan Dobbins, good to see you. Crazy Jewelry Lady, hi from Florida. Christy Hohen from Palm Desert. Susan H. from Phoenix. Mary O'Connor from Minnesota, good to see you. Have you guys watched the original that we're going to be talking about? I did put a link in the description, but it is quite good if you have seen it. Let me just see if Stephanie's around. Still don't see her there. Okay, Vicky Moreau, yes, good to see you. And you say that you have seen it. Yeah, Stephanie is here, but I want to talk to her in chat. So, I mean, I want to talk to her as part of StreamYard. I thought I sent her the link, but maybe I didn't. I sent it to her on Instagram. Judo Tap Out. That's quite a funny name. I feel like I'm on Romper Room. It's like, pick me, pick me. Well, I just picked you. Susan says, I've seen clips. Lawn Chair Detective said, I did watch. Good to see you, Lawn Chair Detective. Gathering Place, hi from Ohio. Josie Alvarado. Sarah says, why am I not hearing the podcast? Not sure. Okay, let me try, see if Stephanie's there again. Still don't see her. See if I can do it this way. It's just tricky if I get this wrong. I don't actually know how to leave a comment on here. I can't leave a comment on my actual phone. Post comment. Okay, there we go. Let's see if I can paste the comment. Sorry, guys. Sorry about this setup. It's not letting me paste. It's not letting me paste what I've just put there. I think I'm going to give Stephanie another 5 minutes, then I'm going to stop. I can't spend too long trying to do this because I know you guys also want to get content here. Yeah. I know that I copied the link. I sent it to Stephanie on Instagram. I don't know if I sent the wrong link, but Bearded Dragons says, I'm going to check the mail really quick. Okay, you can. Monica Ortiz, good to see you there. Carly, how do we become a member? I don't have membership on YouTube, but you can become a member of Instagram, of Patreon. Go to patreon.com/TCRS. Yes, Stephanie is a moderator, but she's also, she's actually part of the chat on that other channel. Sharon's just put up the Patreon link. Sharon, I'm glad that you're here. Glad that you made it. Let me try one more time. Let's see. Oh, she's still not there. Unfortunately, I can't copy the link on here and send it to her because it's not allowing me to paste the link on my phone. And I can't do that on. I can't do it on this particular computer. Smooth move, Chris's part called his tagline. Nick, can I assist? The problem is that in order to get Stephanie in, I've kind of got to ignore chat and ignore everyone for about 2 or 3 minutes. I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to do that. Yeah, I don't really do the StreamYard setup on this computer. I'm on a different computer now. So unfortunately, I think we're going to have to do this without Stephanie. I'm not really sure whose fault that is. I'm not sure what's really going on because I thought I did provide the link. Maybe Stephanie will come on a little bit later. Gathering Place, thanks for covering this case. Okay, I think we try and wait for 1,000 people to come on and then get going. Ashley says, no, love Stephanie. I can't send it to your mail, Stephanie, because I can't access the link. So is it not on your Instagram? Just the last message I sent on Instagram. Unless I didn't press send. Barbara Monfrini, hi from Texas. I really wanted Stephanie on here for a couple of reasons. One would save me sort of hosting this entire episode. Holly Berry, hi from California. Also that Stephanie, as I said, she was actually in the chat on the other channel. And it just would be interesting to get her notes as well, just to get things from her side. Hi from Ontario, Canada, Dodie Redding. Good to see you. Sandra Stevens from, I think, Virginia. Sonia Stanger from, is that either Western Australia or, I think, Western Australia. Christina Jansen, I think we've seen you here before. Good to see you. So in this live stream, I'm gonna take you through some of the notes that I took when Don spoke last night. He said some pretty incredible things, and we're just gonna try and make sense out of that. So I've got, let's just see, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 pages worth of notes that we're gonna go through. Nana Norton says hi from Tennessee. Good to have people from Tennessee here. I believe there's been a lot of flooding in Tennessee. Connie, hello everyone. Ajith Fernando, hi from Queensland, Australia. Raymond S, what did Don say? Well, he said the neighborhood screams, for starters. he also said he was going to the police today. But so far the fact that nothing's been in the mainstream media, I think, suggests that I see Stephanie is about to come on, so that's great news. Nothing's on the mainstream media, so I suppose if he did go, he simply went there, perhaps collected the report and came back. Otherwise, I think he would have heard something. Betty Boop says, I guess there were no arrests today. Okay, so I'm going to bring on Stephanie. Apologies for the sort of delay. There she is. Add to stream.
It was my fault.
Okay, no, don't worry. Are you there? There we go.
I'm here. Hi. Thanks for being so patient.
I actually thought you were going to not get you. I was like, I don't know who did something wrong here. Did I not press send or what, you know?
No, you did fine. It was on my end. I have a new computer and I'm learning it.
Oh, okay. Well, that certainly explains a lot. You know, as soon as you get a new phone on your computer, it's like you're lost. You know, it's like, where is everything? Yeah.
And sorry, it's so dark in here. I'm just noticing the picture's really dark. But
well, I've got like a spotlight, which is weird. When I'm on YouTube, it's fine, but when I'm on StreamYard, I overexpose. I've actually got to adjust the light. It just tends to be different. So I do see you've got some lights behind you. If you move them a bit closer, it might make a difference. But how's the weather in Connecticut?
Rainy. More rainy now than it was on the day of the tropical storm.
Oh, okay. We just had, like, where I live is very dry. So if it rains, it's like a news event. We just had when I say thunderstorm, I mean fireworks, just like huge flashes of lightning. When I went to bring my patio furniture in, I was almost like, you know, ducking because the thunder was so nearby, the lightning was so nearby. And then it only lasted about 5 minutes. It was like incredibly hard rain and then gone, you know. But I'm sure my garden's pretty happy. But I do know it rained quite a lot in Tennessee, and I was just wondering whether the rainfall in Tennessee might be a factor. It was a factor in the Scott Peterson case. People were saying, well, the floods that they had in Tennessee were actually central Tennessee, irrelevant. But, you know, over time it might be a factor, who knows. I just want to refer to this judo tap out question here. Do you think the video is legit from the search party earlier? I'm not sure if when you say earlier today, I know Don did say in the video that something like the toy, he doesn't recognize the toy and he didn't ask for the search or something like that. They didn't sort of clear it with him. And someone made quite a clever point saying, why would you find hair on a toy when Summer virtually had no hair? You wouldn't easily find hair if your head was shaved like that.
Unless it had been there for some time.
Yeah, but then it's not really relevant if it's been there, you know, kind of thing.
There's stuff everywhere.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you sketch the scene, right? We're going to deal with the notes. You took notes, I took notes. We're going to deal with the notes we took in a moment. Before we do that, for those who maybe don't know, Chris McDonough in the interview room had an episode like immediately prior to this other channel, right? It was sort of, it finished, I think, about an hour before Don came on, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. And so everything that was said in that was uppermost in people's minds. Everyone was like, whoa. And then you sort of almost thought, and in fact, the channel did respond to what was on the interview room, if only to say we're not going to talk about that. That is classic apologia, you know. And someone said, I actually mentioned this to you at the time, Stephanie, someone said, compared what had happened there, saying, you know what, that is like someone who robs a bank in the morning, a gentleman who robs the bank in the morning and he commits murder in the afternoon. You're not gonna be interested in him robbing the bank. Of course you are. Of course you are going to be interested in, you know, the whole
past
thing.
behavior.
You know? Yeah, absolutely. Past behavior is a predictor of future behavior. So yeah, you are going to, it is relevant and you are going to want to know about it. Especially any criminal behavior, you know, you're going to want to know the extent of it and how it possibly relates to your criminal scenario that you're dealing with. You know, isn't the most obvious person to be involved in a criminal event someone who's a criminal? You know, if you take the John Benet Ramsey case, the whole idea is, well, were there people in the area that were certain kinds of criminals? You know, that's the obvious place to look. In the Madeleine McCann case as well. In the Summer Wells case, there's a small element of, well, weren't there any bad people in the area? Yeah, well, you know, maybe drug dealers. And so, but we're not going to apply that to Don. We're not going to apply to, and we're not going to ask Don about it. So there was about 15 minutes where they sort of set the scenes and I think made Don feel comfortable enough that he could come on and that wasn't going to be addressed. You know, everyone asked nice questions, kind of thing. Anyway, what did you think of that whole, the way it was set up in the first 15 minutes?
I thought they were caught off guard because of how Chris had labeled or what the lie was going to be about was about the 40 minutes. I think a lot of us thought that it was going to be about a whole show on that topic, and it was mostly, I mean, nearly all of it was about the SA story that Don is involved with Jeannie and Trish. It was their stories. And at the end, there was a little bit about the 40 minutes. I think they were caught off guard and they thought they were going to be filling in timeline gaps with Don. And then it was all of a sudden, we have to make it, you know, him feel comfortable to come on after this other live.
I was also caught off guard. I was like,
I was too. I was waiting for, I thought maybe there was going to be the special guest and then a part 2. And I think that there's going to be a specific show on that, but I thought it was going to be yesterday.
But I thought it was really fortuitous from our perspective. You have this really, let's just say, controversial discussion taking place, not third-hand, it's with the actual victim. And then you have the perpetrator, allegedly or whatever, coming on directly afterwards. And no, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to go there. We're trying to find out what happened to Summer Wells, but we're not going to talk about that. Okay, that's off limits. I think a lot of people would have recognized the irony in that. You know, I did a live recently called The Silence of the Lambs. I think this is the silence of the wolves, right?
Yeah.
So someone says it's hard to dispute first-hand information. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jeannie did a good job. Someone says, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your name. Is it Neem? Says Stephanie has the most incredible eyes. Okay. This is the Wild West of YouTube. You get.
They're tired now, and I've got sunburn.
Yeah. Someone actually asked me, "Are you tired?" The answer is, "I'm really tired." And if you're expecting September to be similarly lots of lives and lots of content, no. September's going to be. There's going to be a bit of a drop in the intensity of the coverage I've been providing. I can tell you that. Neve, okay. Yeah.
I was going to say, I don't think that it's irrelevant, because they kept saying it was 40 years ago, 40 years ago, 40 years ago. Even if it was 40 years ago that happened, there's been a generational cycle of abuse. Don's oldest son is a registered sex offender. He is. That's who he raised. He raised this young man, and that's not 40 years ago. That's okay. How old is he now? In his 20s? And then if you think about his own boys are now the age he was when he was perpetrating a crime against Jeannie. So to me, the cycle of abuse is absolutely relevant to Summer's case and what happened.
Also, how old was Jeannie when this started?
The same age as Summer.
Yeah. The fact that Don himself has admitted that they shared a bed, like, sounds like Summer's whole life. If you took all of that stuff away, if you took all the history away, all the backstory away, that alone would be cause for concern, right? But bringing that in makes it beyond cause for concern. It makes it pretty. Yeah, how can one say that in a very strong way? It seems pretty damning. Texas Girl says, I think they need a close-up drone to check the area. Something else that I think is quite interesting is Grandma's brother also has a storied career in that area. He also has a history. I'm not going to talk about that too much here, but if you think about that, if Grandma's brother did something, did Grandma's brother do anything to her? Also, does Grandma know things about her brother that she doesn't want to, draw attention to for whatever reason? So it just shows you the scale of the secrets and the sickness in this particular case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we know a lot more details about Don's past. We don't know nearly as much about Candace's upbringing and her past, and what she might have gone through.
To be honest, I feel like we know more than enough. We know far more than I think we need to know.
Yeah.
With Candace, we know her backstory with her own children. With Candace, we know about her lifestyle kind of history. We know that aspect. We also know from Candace's own words the circumstances in which her first two children, were sort of taken from the family fabric, and she acknowledged it had to do with drugs, right? And that was when she was 19 years old, so 20 years earlier. And so aren't the facts that are playing out right now? The boys have been removed from the home. Summer's missing. Her other daughter, Candace, also went missing for a short time. How does that happen? It doesn't happen in a vacuum. Aren't the circumstances from 20 years ago repeating themselves? And that is without even bringing in what happened to Rosemary Bly. Because it feels like it's Rosemary Bly all over again. We had day 69. Are we going to ever reach 12 years missing? What does the future hold in terms of this? I do think the Barry Morphew case, that preliminary hearing shows how much evidence the law enforcement can sit on and do nothing with. I mean, in a way, I respect and admire their discipline that they can have this incredible amount of information and do nothing. And I wonder whether that's not also the case in this case. Okay, I thought you were going to respond to that. Are you freezing? Are you there?
No, I'm
Oh,
here.
okay. Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think about some of the evidence that we've just heard, the law enforcement suspected him, seems like it, from the word go. The moment they even entered the house, they were like, wow, this guy, is he acting right? But I think the thing that they really try and make an effort to find are the remains. And that is probably why it wasn't that they didn't have their suspicions, it's that they wanted to get the final pieces of the puzzle, and that's probably the case with Summer Wells as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it gives me hope, because they said that, you know, they didn't have a suspect for so long, even though a lot of people had their eyes on him.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing here. And it can take a long time for them to build their case.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when there's a missing person and there's very little evidence of that missing person, I think they do take a sort of not wait and see approach, but let's get more. Let's try and get more, you know.
Yeah.
Have you got your notes with you?
I do.
Okay.
I got my notes in my Spidey Sense notebook.
Oh wow, that's really good. You know, that's something I should probably think about doing, is having a TCRS notebook. You know.
Oh, I love that, because I still like to write things down.
Yeah, same here. So I'm gonna deal with like half a page, and I'll hand over to you to do some, just talking about your notes. Okay.
Okay.
So I wrote a couple of things that Don said verbatim, a couple of quotes. The first thing I wrote was something Don said right in the beginning. I think he was just asked, how things going? And he said, as far as I know, it looks like it's at a standstill. I thought that was quite significant, because I think that is exactly what law enforcement want him to think. I think the whole idea, whether it's the Morphew case or the Lori Vallow case, it's part of the strategy of law enforcement that it looks like nothing is happening. And it looks like, well, you can go back to normal. And so if you are guilty, we don't know who is guilty in this case, but if the person responsible is guilty and it looks like nothing is happening, the temptation to go back to normal is quite strong. And you might think, no, so what? You just go back to normal. But if you have bad habits and you've been kind of consorting and associating with bad people, then that temptation, and you're doing it like it's just part of your ordinary life, then that temptation over time gets harder and harder to resist. So in the Barry Morphew case, for example, and I don't know the answer to this, but is it possible Barry was also having an affair? Is it possible, if he was having an affair, that had an impact? Well, you may not know if he was having an affair, but if you allow enough time to go by, wouldn't that person then meet up with the person, and then you know that kind of thing? So that kind of situation. So in the same thing here, everyone's watching and you've got to be on your best behavior. Well, that's quite hard to do as more and more time goes by. Also, I've made a video previously called Loose Lips Sink Ships. Well, if you are under the influence, you're either high or you're drunk, and enough time's gone by, you might have that false sense of security to pat yourself on the back and say, well, the cops are dumb, blah, 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 you know, we gave them a run for their money or whatever it is, and so loose lips sink ships. That can also happen. He also said, this is also what I wrote very early on, it's something he mentioned very early on. He said, I could call TBI tomorrow or Monday. I think it's hard to say whether this is coming from him or the creators. I think they want to get the police report. Apparently Don doesn't have the police report, and now apparently that's the reason he apparently was going to Hawkins County today, was to collect the police report. I'm not sure if it's to share it with a YouTuber or whether it's because Don is curious about it, or whether there's another reason, like the police actually said, Don, can we have a word with you? Can you maybe come in sometime tomorrow? Which one of those is it? We'll probably find out in due course. I did find it interesting that Don had cleaned himself up, that he was shaved. It looked like he sort of had a haircut. It did look like he's quite clean shaved, but in some of the footage I saw, it's not absolutely clean, but he was dressed quite well. And then a final point that I'm going to make before I hand over to you, Stephanie, was, I know it sounds a bit silly, but in a weird way, Don's interview was premeditated. What I mean by that is, right in the beginning, he had those funny glasses on his head, and I think he said it's his cousin's glasses, or I don't think it's his wife's glasses. But anyway, it's someone's glasses. And like I was like watching this, just thinking, it's nighttime. Why on earth? And you're outside. What are those glasses for? I mean, it's not to read the comments. It's not to. It doesn't seem to be to engage with the chat, because he never had them on during the chat. So I was thinking, and then right at the end, he said, "I'm going to read you from a verse from Isaiah." So all along, Don's plan was to say whatever he's going to say, share his spiel, and then end it off on this sort of a note, this sort of Christian note, where it picked out this verse. And I thought that was quite interesting. It wasn't really spontaneous. It was something that he kind of not choreographed, but meant to do. And then the whole channel sort of ended with a prayer. I thought that was also quite interesting, an interesting end, given how that episode began with, we're not going to talk about this, we're not going to talk about that. And if you compare that to the SDA church, who also not going to talk about this, not going to talk about that. You can be a believer, or let me ask it as a question. Can you be a believer? Can you be a person of faith, but then you're not a critical thinker? Are they mutually exclusive? So if you're a believer, should you not think critically? If you're a person of faith, should you say, you know what, my faith is so great, I don't actually need evidence of anything? What about in a criminal case? You can't have that in a courtroom, like playing out right now in the Barry Morphew case. They need to know what the evidence is so that this person's life can be judged. It does happen in the real world. Someone does have to decide. In a jury, it's actually people, ordinary people, have got to decide, based on this evidence, what do you think is going to happen? So are people of faith just not part of that equation? Or can they be? Can they say, you know what, God gave me free will, I can also, I've always said, if you're a Christian, your knowledge of yourself matters. You need to sometimes have trials and be tempted, and then not give in to the temptation. I don't know if that counts as much as if you never have your morality tested. I'm not saying put someone to the test. I'm just saying, knowing thyself matters. And so you've even got to be critical about your own self in order to be genuine, I guess, in God's eyes. So I just thought that was quite interesting, the way that was put together. Okay, let me hand over to you, Stephanie.
Well, he said it was coming to standstill, and the law enforcement people who are searching, they're not going to keep somebody that they're looking into on the up and up in the loophole. They're just not going to do that. They're going to keep them at a distance, but keep their knowledge at a distance, but keep a close eye on them. And I think that's what they're doing, just like they did in the Barry Morphew case. I agree with you. He did look very clean cut for Don. And maybe I think that the channel said that there's an attorney that is giving them advice. So I don't know that it's necessarily his attorney, but so it's kind of like a PR thing. They say, did you notice that he had the hair off his face? He wasn't wearing his glasses. It's sort of like an image thing. I did notice that he had the glasses on his head, and he mentioned that they were his sister's glasses. So I'm not sure how what kind of contact he's been making with his sister, if they've been, I don't know. It's just kind of odd that he had her glasses, I guess. And it's very interesting, the chapter and verse that he chose, which we'll go into, as we go in the sequence of the show. But that was extremely telling to me, and that he was planning on sharing that all along, as if he just stumbled on that, I didn't believe it.
Yeah, quite interesting.
Do you want me to share one of the things that I noted?
Yeah.
Okay. That you didn't mention yet. They were talking about Summer, and then in his description of Summer, he said she's a handful and she's real mean to her brothers. And it just seemed strange to me that you're describing your daughter in this way. She's gone missing. And then to use it as a reason, seemingly, to say, she would take one of her brother's toys and toss it and throw it and break it. And they would be real upset about that, but they wouldn't hurt her. The oldest one, he wouldn't even hurt her. I just think, why share something?
I think he's trying to sow a seed. He's trying to take your thoughts in that direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not saying, I wonder if he hurt her. He's saying, I would never think that he would hurt her, but no one asked. Nobody really asked.
Well, they were off limits. They couldn't discuss them in the live. You couldn't.
Can I ask you? Did you notice that he looked weary? That he sounded weary?
Yeah, he sounded like things weren't going great, and they're not. And I mean, he should be a lot more than just a little bit weary. He should be, I don't know, losing faith.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of wondered, has the wind been taken out of his sails because of what had just been discussed, and I'm sure he was watching that, or is it that and everything else? Because he seemed pretty worn out. Not only his demeanor, but he actually the way that he spoke about things sounded quite deflated sometimes. He was just like, I don't know what anything. It was just quite like Don can be quite a fighter and he can kind of stand up for himself, but this didn't sound quite like Don. Don sounded quite
defeated.
Yeah, that's definitely the sense I got. I thought he looked a bit like that. I thought he looked a bit depressed, and I also thought he sounded quite depressed at times. By the way, if anyone in chat's listening, we are looking for a genealogy map. Isn't there a Jeannie on both sides? There's his stepsister Jeannie, and Candace had a brother. Candace had a sister Jeannie as well, who I think was, yeah.
I try to be careful when I talk about the relationships between the family members, because it's confusing to me. I really need that, genealogy.
Yeah.
I'm certainly open to working on it. I just haven't had a chance yet, and I want to get it right. It's not something,
Yeah, and I think it's quite complicated because there aren't just family trees. There are also mixed family trees, and then it does get complicated. And it's not just one generation; it's 3 generations or more, and then does get really complicated.
Do you remember the Orion and Orson West case, the 4 and 3-year-old little boys that went missing? They went missing from their home, And I think it's been just about 8 months that they're still missing.
Still
and
missing.
this case reminded me of the Summer Wells case, because the father, the foster father, or I guess they had adopted the boys, he had, when he was doing an interview, he described their boys as, oh, they're rambunctious. And and he also said, oh, I just want to go in everybody's houses and check. She's here, but you know, I can't do that because I don't want to invade their privacy.
That is quite interesting.
Situation.
Yeah, that is quite interesting.
When you talk about intertextualities, it reminds me a lot of that case, and they still have no suspects.
I love how that word sounds with an American accent. It sounds pretty cool. Intertextualities, yeah.
I just got to get my shirt.
Yeah,
and then I'll wear it when live.
Me too. I do too. So I'm going to get to the point you made. I made a couple of points just before that. I think they were asking, let me just say this. There were a couple of people who were quite disparaging towards that particular channel and said that they had their reservations. I found the interview itself actually quite well done. I thought there are some difficult questions, and I was sometimes quite surprised that they asked them. I was quite surprised that Don answered them, and I thought they asked some pretty good questions. So I thought that the content itself, based on what was asked and answered, that's cutting out the first 15 minutes. I thought that was actually quite good content. I thought it was quite strong, quite valuable. So one of the questions that was asked was, so Don was asked, did Summer suffer from autism? I'm not sure if he was asked whether she spoke much, but Don was basically very positive. He said Summer was 100%. She was very healthy, very, very healthy in every way, mentally, physically healthy in every way, no problems at all. I don't know if you could give a more glowing endorsement than that. I mean, do you think she was very, very, very healthy? Do you think, if you take her teeth, just as one example, I don't know if she was the absolute picture of health. But I thought that was a bit of overkill in his answer, but almost to be expected. So he described her, he didn't really address the whole autism thing, except to say that she was mentally very healthy, or healthy in every way. It sort of provided a sort of general assessment. No problems at all. Well, what about at Sabbath school? The clinginess, which Robin also mentioned. I don't know if you want to call it a problem, but it certainly seems unusual. And then on the one hand, he describes her that way, no problems at all. And then he says she was pretty mean to her brothers. It's quite a change. I mean, you wouldn't actually imagine Summer in that way. She was pretty mean to her brothers. She was a handful. He says that as well. It's quite a weird thing for a father to be saying in this situation. She was mean to her brothers. She was a handful. But then he says, my oldest son would never hurt her or nothing. I'm not saying that she wasn't mean to her brothers. She may actually have, how can I put it? I mean, boys and girls are a little bit like dogs and cats when they're very young. There's a bit of they play with different toys. If a little girl gets hurt, they cry, and the boys get into trouble. The boys are tough and strong. The girls are, there's that whole dynamic going on. So, you can also get the sense from some brothers that, I always get into trouble because of you're crying, and so blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if I get the sense that she was mean to them. They will know that answer the best. I think the real question is, who was Don mean to? Was Don mean to Candace? Was Don mean to the boys? Is Don kind of just a mean dude in general? Or was he a teddy bear with Summer? Given what we've been speaking about, I don't know whether you can, being SA and being mean are like, SA is like the extreme version of being mean in terms of being a father, isn't it? Okay, so I'm just going to finish off with another 2 comments and I'll hand over to you. I think this was something that was raised by, do you remember this person in chat, Haiku or something like that? Something like Haiku.
Yeah,
anyway, she said,
do.
I think she asked a question. She said that Dave Rader, the guy from EquiSearch, I think, said the scent went down the driveway. Summer scent went down the driveway, whereas Don said, no, it went via the dog trail. I thought that was quite an astute point. And that's just another good question that was allowed. And Don was sort of quite dismissive of it, but I think that was quite a good point. I'm going to deal with the screams next, but I first want to hand over to you, just get some of your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think it's very, very unusual for siblings to instigate each other and have that kind of dynamics, a little bit of sibling rivalry. There's a degree of that that's quite normal in families. She was the baby of the family and was probably, keeping up with the best of them. Best of them is what they were trying to get across, that, she wasn't a pushover little thing. But yeah, what else did I want to say about that?
Have you got anything to before the screams? Because I'm going to deal with that next.
That Don said that he favored Summer and that the boys weren't bothered by it. So again, there's like another dynamic that could have an effect on the sibling relationships. If they always felt like they were getting the raw end of the deal, or, Summer was.
Well, I can imagine children being mean to each other if the one is being favored. I think that is just absolutely normal. I don't know how, it's quite interesting that Don kind of admits it. Yeah, I favored Summer and that the boys were absolutely okay with it. Really? Were all 3 boys okay with it? Well, that's like in the history of families, in the history of kids, that must be kind of like a new milestone in sibling rivalry. The first time in human history that a little child didn't mind its brother or sister being favored openly. It's actually healthy narcissism. It's healthy to say, I want the same size piece of cake as my brother. To argue and nitpick over little things like that, because you do want to be treated fairly. And if you don't argue for those things or argue against those slights, you're going to struggle in the real world where people are going to want to pass you over. So you don't want to be passed over in your own family. That is healthy narcissism. And most people have that inherently, that they know to fight for what they, not what they deserve, but for what, for fairness, if I can put it that way. Yeah.
It seemed like Don gave the boys things and versus giving Summer attention, like that he was showing all their dirt bikes and all the stuff that they had. I don't know that I saw a bike that looked like it was Summer's. He just said she would run after them on their bikes and a lot, but it seems like he gave the boys stuff and Summer the attention. Maybe that's what he means by favored.
I don't want to be self-indulgent or whatever, but I can tell you I'm a little bit perturbed with favoritism in my own family. You know, my sister actually is driving the car that my father would actually normally drive himself. And when I came back from overseas, I lived overseas for quite a long time. When I came back, I didn't have a car, and I just sort of needed a little bit of help when I got back. And at that time, my father had like 4 or 5 vehicles, and I said, "Do you mind if I use one just for a little while until I find a vehicle?" And he was like, "No, get your own." And my sister's literally been driving my father's vehicle for, I don't know if it's 3 years or 4 years now. So she doesn't have her own vehicle. She's been driving his vehicle. And I haven't made a big fuss about it. I haven't sort of harped on it. In fact, I've virtually said nothing about it. But does it bother me? It doesn't bother me that she's driving his vehicle. It bothers me, this double standard, that when I needed his help, I didn't get it. And it makes you wonder, you know, does he love her more than me? Is it one rule for her, one rule for me, right? And so it's good that those things bother you, because if they don't, it means in other things you are going to be taken advantage of. So you do need to stand up for yourself. Obviously, as an adult, I can choose to say, you know, I guess that shows that, and I'm not very happy with it, but you know, move along, kind of thing. I'm just saying it's definitely a reality, and favoritism. For example, you listening there, you might think, "No, it doesn't really bother me. You know, so what if that's happening?" But if it's happening to you, it tends to be quite a big deal, because it's revealing certain aspects in a dynamic that may be painful to realize. May not even be true, but it might be. It might reflect badly on you and on your status within the family, and that's really painful. It's quite wounding to think about. Even if you're wrong, you know, well, why are you not being reassured in that area?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, as a child, if there's open favoritism like that, then you've got to wonder. So I do think that is quite an important factor. Even the favoritism actually seems so relevant and so important that I think Alison said that Candace was jealous of Summer. So that's a lot of favoritism for a wife to be, you know.
Yeah. You wonder though if part of it is like having to do with gender. Like you have brothers too, right? You have some brothers. Like I don't know what the dynamics are there, but you wonder if your father in his mind thinks the daughter needs him and you're fine, you're on your own. And that's not the right way to be thinking, but he's actually in his mind giving you the credit that, you know, you've got this, you can take care of yourself, even though it feels it's not fair.
There's something I can say about that, but I'm not going to. I don't want to make this about me. But I mean, you definitely do have a point there. So I'm going to come back to the notes. I want to talk about the screams. So there's a quote from Don. He says, "My neighbor heard some screams. She heard some really weird screams before they heard us screaming, and that still haunts her." So in the same way that one comment you made was so over the top, in terms of that Summer's, you know, totally 100% fine, this is also quite over the top in terms of, my neighbor heard some screams and they were really weird, and it wasn't us screaming, it was before that, and it's haunting her. It's something that he repeated quite a few times, and then he sort of, this is now yet another scenario Don has given us. And then he spoke about that he thought that after that Summer got in a car, or that she was thrown in a car. He corrected himself there. He was like, I think Summer got in a car or was thrown in a car, whatever. It's quite interesting that he's got to correct himself on that point. And then he says, I think she may have been fighting somebody. So he's trying to investigate this aspect. And then what I also thought was fascinating was the panel didn't ask anything about it. Don mentions the screams, describes it in quite a lot of detail. Panel, on to the next question. No follow-up. Just move on to the next question. The other interesting thing is he doesn't identify the neighbor. This neighbor is supposedly a really important witness. So tell her, what's her name? Let us contact her, let law enforcement contact her, let somebody contact her. You do want to find your daughter, don't you? Well, here's an important person who heard something important. You're not very happy because you say the law enforcement didn't listen to her. Well, let's find out about her. What's her name? Oh, well, we don't know the identity of the neighbor, but apparently where his driveway goes up, her driveway goes up on the opposite side. That's apparently where she stays. So apparently the direct neighbor to him. And then he would bring it up again in a bit more detail. I don't have it right here in my notes, but I think it's a bit further, where he actually said that the screams were, I think he was asked later on, what was weird about the screams? Why were the screams weird? And Don said, well, it sounded like they were muffled. It sounded like someone had their hand over Summer's mouth, that Summer was being muzzled or something like that. And so, in other words, what he's doing is he's sketching this almost technicolor accurate picture of Summer being abducted. You can actually hear her. You can imagine what is going on, and it's haunting this person. The big problem with this scenario is, why is it coming out on day 68, day 69? If it was such a big deal, why didn't he mention it during the Sermon on the Mount? If it was so significant, why hasn't it come up at all? Not even on Don's social media, never mentioned it. So why is it coming up now? Well, it's what I call tailoring. It's when you provide a version and then you get some more information and then you tailor it. And this is what I believe is tailoring. And then he, like I said earlier, he kind of he came across to me as though he was quite worn out. He was quite sort of weary. And at one point he just said, it's never, ever going to be the same. And I thought, yeah, it's not going to be the same. But I just thought it was quite an interesting to hear him say that in a way that he'd sort of, he's not in denial so much. I think maybe he was in denial in the beginning. I think he's starting to realize things have changed permanently. Not only like, well, Summer's gone, so life can carry on like it did when Rosemary Bly disappeared. It's like things have changed, like permanently. Is he going to have his boys back ever? Question. Is life going to be back to normal ever? Question. Is grandma coming back? Question. And so on and so on. Thoughts, Stephanie?
I would have thought that would have been brought up, as you said, day one of Summer gone missing, that the neighbor heard screams. And if the neighbor did hear screams, then law enforcement has talked to the neighbor and interviewed the neighbor and is not revealing what, the results of that were. I almost thought it was like because he kept going back to saying she, so it led me to believe the neighbor was a female, and he kept saying she was so haunted, and for me, I was almost thinking that it was like he's describing what Candace may have heard, thought, and felt in the last moments. And that's where that emotion that was coming from. To me, it was sharing something that was a bit of truth, but applied to someone else. I wonder.
I think it's also possible that the psychology of screams under a hand, you know, you saw that video I put up on Patreon today of that little boy from from Finland, sorry. And I mean, it's absolutely gut-wrenching to watch that. But it's this little boy who just teeters off into slightly too deep, or just slightly too deep. And he's trying to get air. And he's probably not really making a lot of noise, but you kind of get the sense of this excruciating effort to the struggle for survival. And what Don's talking about here is a sort of analogy for that. It's not a silent analogy, but it's a sort of analogy of being under the, instead of being underwater, under the control, under the hand, under the grip of this shadowy, unknown person. I'm just saying it can be an analogy for that as well, which I think is quite interesting. I do also wonder, I think it's quite interesting that what you said now about, you know, that if it was anything besides drowning, could there have been strange noises? You know, could there have been strange noises surrounding something else? Personally, I don't think so, but it's certainly worth considering. In the John Monet Ramsey case, there was a scream in the middle of the night. In the Madeleine McCann case, there should have been a scream, you know, given the scenario, and then there wasn't. You know, a stranger taking a child, why on earth would a child not cry out, especially a child of that age? So, yeah, I find that definitely quite interesting. Anything else?
I think that I was meaning it more the sounds she was hearing at the swimming hole, in my opinion.
Oh, okay. Because I think
the muffledness was perhaps the drowning and the hearing of what might have brought the attention to the child.
It could also be what Don imagines happened at the swimming hole. You know, that she was trying to, but you know, that drowning in Finland was silent. That boy made no sound right in front of everybody there. You know what I mean? He was literally fighting for his life in front of all those people, and no one noticed, mostly because no one heard a sound. That they could see things, they could see a few splashes, but they thought it was sort of harmless. And it was quite interesting with that was also the moment after he stopped struggling, that little boy, he floated just beneath the surface. And in a river situation, you're not going to see someone if they're just beneath the surface in a similar situation. But the other thing I wanted to mention was, I don't know whether Chris McDonough mentioned it. I think he probably did. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it. I think in one of the first videos I made, I think it was the one, 5 reasons why it's not an abduction. Well, one of the obvious reasons why it would have been an abduction would be someone screaming. If a little child is abducted in broad daylight, even with a mouth covered, you would hear them because they're just right there. You know, if she was abducted from the house, why wouldn't you hear them? And so it seems like Don has adopted this likely scenario as his likely scenario. The only problem is, Don, it's a little bit late. It's a great story, but it would have been better to use on day 1. Unfortunately, on day 68, it feels tailored. It doesn't feel, it feels like it's been plucked, it's been borrowed from someone else. It's not part of what actually happened.
If the neighbor heard the scream, surely Candace and Grandma and the boys would have heard the scream from the yard.
Yeah.
And not that she was just gone.
What's also quite interesting with Don's scenario here is, let's say you imagine this is fictitious. So you say it didn't happen and Don made it up, then you've also got to ask, okay, so why that neighbor? I mean, if the neighbor didn't hear it, you know, what is she going to say? And maybe she is going to come forward and say, I heard something or I didn't, whatever. But I think something that's quite interesting with that is, if I understand him correctly, the direction where someone was supposed to have gone in order to be heard by the neighbor is the opposite direction to where Don himself was when he went to the funky shed. So you must bear that in mind. If Summer's being abducted, Summer's screaming, it's not going to work very well if Don is there where it's happening, because then he should have heard it himself. And so if you think about it, Don is at the funky shed, which is the opposite side to the driveway that goes up to the Chalet Wells on Ben Hill Road. In other words, it's on the opposite side, so he wouldn't have heard anything. Oh, that makes sense. I suppose you could also argue that, well, he wasn't anywhere near there anyway, but if some abductor's taking her off on foot or something, then Don would have intercepted her if he was heading in that direction. It sort of stands to reason. So he needs a story where they're heading in my view, phantom abductor is heading in the opposite direction. And so no wonder Don didn't see anything. But he does talk about seeing a neighbor. I don't know if it's the same neighbor, but he mentioned a neighbor at the funky shed, you know, where the boys were as well. Which neighbor? Again, we still don't know the name, kind of thing. Just a couple of other things that I thought were interesting. And again, I want to sort of credit this channel with addressing this. Was I think they acknowledged that no flyers or billboards have been put up in the Beach Creek community area. So like right now, we want to know where Summer is, and right now there's a search for Summer. Okay, well, where Summer went missing, is there any sign that people are looking for her? Are there any billboards, flyers on Ben Hill Road or just in that area? And what's quite interesting was Don sort of said something I thought was quite weak. He said, the folks won't allow it on their windows, you know, that the shops won't allow him to put up flyers looking for Summer. And sort of like, really? I doubt it. I mean, that's what he says, but I can't really, like, there seems to be a lot of public awareness in Tennessee about this, and you imagine people do want to look for Summer.
He also mentioned, or someone that was on the panel mentioned, that there was another child that there was an Amber Alert for, and now that child's replaced Summer's photo.
Good point. You've got a good memory, Stephanie. Good detailed memory.
Thanks.
Then at this point, Don actually goes into the house during the interview. So it's quite weird. He's sort of live, and then I'm not sure if he went to get cigarettes or something, but he goes sort of in the house. You can't really see much. You don't see Candace, but he sort of goes into the house. I think he comes out the same doorway, and then they talk about getting the copy of the police report. I do kind of get the sense that this was someone else's idea, that someone said, Don, do you have a copy of the police report? And Don's like, no. Well, get a copy of the police report. And then these channels can then, dig into that aspect. So this is a quote that I also wrote down. I kind of favored Summer a lot. Not I kind of favored Summer. I kind of favored Summer a lot. And the boys understood. They never held that against me. Believable? So something else he said that I thought was quite interesting. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but he said I didn't hit no traffic jams, no tractors. And I don't know if you picked this up. He's now changed the length of time to 25 to 30 minutes. It was first 30 minutes, now it's 25 to 30. I'm not sure if he previously said 40 minutes, but he's definitely gone now from 30 to 25. And I think he was saying the police would take 45 minutes from Kingsport at quite a high speed. And then someone in chat, I can't verify this, I just remember seeing it. Someone in chat said, well, I've just Googled, or I've just gone to Google Maps, and the closest police station to Benhill Road was 20 minutes away. I don't know if it's true, but I thought that was quite interesting. And then there was some of this resignation and him sounding quite defeated. He was asked a question and he said, I haven't got a clue. So like at one point, he's very adamant about what's going on. He talks about the scream and is quite clear about what that's all about, and then he doesn't have a clue. It's quite odd. In the same way that he doesn't have a clue, the next thing he talks about is co-worker, and this is his suspect from day one. So it's like this contradiction between not having a clue, not having any idea, and then being absolutely certain immediately. Another thing he said was, I don't know the first thing about anything. It's a bit of a contradiction to some of the other very specific points that he makes. You know, where he says, I knew immediately what happened. He said that quite a few times.
If that's
Don also reacts, yeah.
If that's referring to the co-worker that he fired, who he thinks might have wanted some kind of revenge, that co-worker supposedly had an alibi. That's what he said.
Yeah. Well, you would think if it's so incriminating, you would think if it's so serious that, well, it would be quite simple. We've got a person of interest and identify him. Or, I don't know, like, you know, if someone is a legitimate suspect, then something is either going to happen or it's not going to happen. Suppose you can make the counter argument that, well, what about Don? You know, but yeah. The problem once again is that this person's not identified. So he doesn't say who he is. So what do you do with that kind of thing? But I mean, Don has stressed quite a few times that this is his number one suspect. But again, he also never mentioned. I remember there was an interview on the main news bulletin in like the first week, and the reporter asked him, "Do you suspect anyone specific? You know, you think it's an abduction? Is there anyone specific that you think could have done this?" And he said, "No, I can't think of anyone." Well, now you can. That was an opportunity to mention this co-worker, and he didn't. Don also, I thought this was quite interesting during the interview. Don actually reacts to that 40-minute issue that was sort of brought up at the end of the interview room episode. Someone asked him about that, and he responds, "There might have been one car here when I pulled up." Bear in mind, previously he said, he was sort of like criticizing them, saying, the police weren't there when I got back. So now he says, there might have been one car here when I pulled up. He has subsequently said maybe there was one or two people there. And then he said, then I turned around and came up here. I don't know if, was that news to you? I wasn't aware that Don, my understanding was that Don actually never went to Chalet Wells, that he sort of drove to the shed and then he went looking for drug dealers. I didn't really get the impression from his first version that he ever went up to Chalet Wells, unless I missed something.
No, and I feel like there's been so many versions that they're getting jumbled for me even. So when sometimes the law enforcement's not there, the next thing you know, they're there and they're barricading the driveway. So I don't know what to think about that. One moment I
it's
thought
so
he went to the
messy
house,
that,
the next
it's
I thought
like,
he didn't make it to the house, and he went
Yeah.
off searching. I thought, well,
in a
he
weird
and Candace
way,
went searching the same time.
yeah, in a weird way, statement analysis with Don is like going into a rabbit hole that turns into just like a maze. You never get out of it. It's the bottom line is there are inconsistencies. There are problems with the timeline. That's the bottom line. But there's just so much of it that how meaningful is it to go through each one every single time? It's just a huge volume of versions kind of thing. So this is when, like, I think, is this my second last page? It's my second last page. It was brought up again about the screams. Don says her mouth was covered. She couldn't scream. She was screaming in terror. It's horrible. Then he actually licks his lips. I noticed that. In the middle of this description, he sort of licks his lips, and then he said, she can scream loud. I mean, that little girl can scream. I just found that quite a chilling but also harrowing thing from him. I wonder whether some of that screaming wasn't in other circumstances. I've spoken about the Silence of the Lambs, and the Silence of the Lambs in the movie is about lambs screaming and then lambs being silent. I wonder whether that's not the case here. The whole SA narrative tends to be about that as well. Lambs screaming, lambs in distress, lambs suffering, lambs caught in horrible, in the grip of someone that has control over them, right? They're in this horrible bind. Someone that is supposed to take care of them, and then there's the silence beside that. That's part of how the whole process works. Someone made a really good point, and I don't mean this to knock anybody, but someone made a very good point that in a situation like you heard last night with Jeannie, it's sometimes better to have a woman speaking to another woman in a situation like that. Women just know in a way how to talk about some of those things in a sensitive way. I'm not saying a man isn't sensitive, it's just a little bit different. I'm just trying to think. There was another case as well where I just thought you probably need a woman interrogating. I'm not sure if it was in the Chris Watts case. But anyway, sometimes it is important to have that kind of thing apply. I thought that was just quite interesting that somebody mentioned that.
They did have a report. I guess they've been speaking with each other for over a month. So she may have been at a different comfort level than just, say, you interviewing her. She might have found comfort in that because they've been in touch for over a period of time, and he and his wife have been helping her, I think.
Yeah. So this brings us to the co-worker. Apparently, I'm not sure why I wrote the co-worker is still being questioned. I don't know if that's what Don said. I don't know if that's true. And then
that's what he said.
And then I think he said he's not sure how much he can say about that. And then he did say, I've always suspected him, and I still do. I've seen a different side of him. You just know when you run into somebody that's capable of pure evilness. So, this is again, Don, like Don can be quite resigned and, don't have a clue. And then he's got this overkill certainty. I've always suspected him. I still do. I've seen a different side to him. You just know when you run into somebody that's capable of pure evilness. And I don't know, doesn't that show like a different side to Don? He's talking about, I've seen a different side to him. Isn't that showing Don as a different side to him as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, in this particular, if you think about it, in this particular interview, he sort of, I won't say throws his sons under the bus, but he sort of cast a bit of shade to them, right? About they wouldn't hurt her, but I favored Summer. It's sort of, you know, it's anyway, it's directing your attention towards them. Then there's the neighbor and some kind of shadowy person, and then it's the co-worker, you know. Not a lot of talk about Summer herself, not too much.
No.
I miss her, you know,
No.
or just him volunteering something like, I remember the last thing she said to me, or that kind of thing. Not really much of that. Something else that was brought up that I thought was quite good by this channel, that was in a way kind of surprising, was they asked him, and it's something I raised as well, they called him out on him loading his tools before he went to the site. I thought that was quite good that they asked him that and that he answered it. And I think he said, I called 911 after I threw the rest of my tools into my truck. And that's actually not true, unless I've misread it here. I guess you guys can go and check on that. I've written it down as, I called 911 after I threw the rest of my tools into my truck. I don't know if he said trunk or, but I mean, he wasn't driving his vehicle that day. We know that. And then he was asked, why did you load your tools? And he said, they're really, really expensive. It's taken him a long time to afford them. If Bria was here, and I'm sorry, Bria's not here. See, I don't think she's actually in modding either. I did try to explain to Bria that you and I sort of covered the interview, and I just didn't get a chance to speak to Bria about it. Just being so busy, I just didn't really get around to it. But if Bria was here, she could probably tell us if those tools are so expensive.
Yeah.
I'll try and get that answer from her at some point. I do think what's quite interesting, I've made a note here. If you think about the vehicles in the story, Stephanie, the vehicles in the story are Candace's vehicle and Grandma's vehicle, but not Don's vehicle. Don's vehicle is mysteriously not part of the transportation that day. Everything is happening in Candace's vehicle and Grandma's vehicle. Seems a little bit odd, except that Candace's phone ends up in Don's vehicle somehow.
Yeah, it's really weird. That's very strange. Did you catch the part where he said that things weren't ever going to be the same, and then he also tied that to his relationship with his wife, that his marriage was never going to be the same, that they weren't getting along very well, and they're struggling. And I imagine that when a child, if you lost a child or you have a child and something's happened to them, of course things are going to be really heightened, but you would think that they would be banded together and supporting one another. And I wonder what the dynamic is, that something is falling apart, and I wonder if that will affect how things, what we might learn of that if they aren't supporting one another anymore. It seemed like, and that might have been part of his wariness.
I think well, look at what's going on at the moment. Don is taking the stage most of the time. Don is controlling the narrative, and Candace isn't. Candace is taking a totally different, playing a totally different role. She goes to the prayer vigils but says nothing, doesn't even pray. not that Candace, I think, is a shrinking violet. She just, in terms of this, she's not going to say anything. Bob Van Lara says, thank you everyone who worked so hard on this incredibly mindful channel. Keeping your story relevant makes a difference. Thanks for that. So where was I? I'm totally thrown out of this. Someone actually asked me earlier, am I tired? I am. I'm pretty tired.
You were just talking about the different ways that Candace and Don are handling this.
Yeah.
The different ways they're reacting.
So I think the true crime community are opening lots of cans of worms constantly. And I think Candace is she slavishly follows social media. I think Don also does, maybe not as much, maybe even more, I don't know. But Candace, if you look at some of her Facebook activity, it feels like she's been on Facebook that entire day. There'll be like 6, 7, 8 posts, certain, in going back into her timeline. And that she really enjoys it and she can spend a lot of time on it. I wouldn't be surprised if Don right now is watching social media like a hawk and has been. It does feel like certain things that have happened, Candace starting to shed tears, Don talking about screams, they are responding to social media. I think a lot of people miss this in true crime, is that you can have a kind of reverse intertextuality where the person who's potentially a suspect or potentially, someone's looking at them, they actually start to take up some of this information and it becomes part, in other words, the outside starts to become part of the inside of the case. I think that happened with the Chris Watts case where they went to talk to him about the shadows. He had actually watched that video before. When they asked him about whether the children were alive, or he said, isn't there a video or something like that? And I think we sometimes forget that. We forget that these people are also watching what we're watching. They're also reading what we're reading. They're also responding and thinking. And so if you think about the cans of worms that might come up that can become a family squabble, well, what about the 17-year-old? How might Candace feel about that? And so on and so on. Also, bringing up the past means the past is brought up, the past becomes real, the past becomes relevant. The fact that everyone is talking about the past makes it quite hard for you to go, the past is the past. The past is now brought into the present. Other people are talking about it, even if you are not. And then it becomes relevant and something to bicker about. And it's not only Don's past, it's also Candace's past. And so they may be thinking in a weird way, you don't reflect very well on me and the other person. I don't like how you reflect on me. I don't like what you just said about me, whatever. Bickering. Think about it just from a neutral but kind of a gentle perspective. Like you don't have a horse in the race. You're not team A or team B. If the story of Donald and Candace and their children is a fairy tale, where do you think it's going to go from here? Do you think there's a happily ever after for anybody? Do you think there's a happily ever after waiting for grandma? No matter what the outcome is here, do you think grandma is heading to happily ever after? Do you think there's a possible way that Candace can find her way to happily ever after? Do you think Don can somehow just get back to life, get back to normal, and there's going to be a happily ever after eventually? Do you think,
No, but
Thanks,
I think
Corporal B.
But I think that his verse, Isaiah chapter 66, verse 22, is his fairy tale.
Yeah, that's really well put. That's very well put. The fairy tale is sort of a fairy tale of the mind in a way. It's like you just deny everything and you're in denial and you get high. And it's not a very sophisticated way of transcending or getting catharsis. It's just really pushing it aside. Of course, what you resist persists. So I'm just going to go through the last page here of notes I've got here. Stephanie, are you quite tired? You look a little bit tired.
I am tired, but it's early. I'm not quite as a night owl as you are.
Yeah, I'm pretty tired, and I'm gonna not be on here for too much longer. I just got this last bit to read, then I'm gonna release you, Stephanie. But I'm very grateful that you were on, because I don't think I had the energy to do a full show just me. I was actually, when I couldn't get hold of you, I was like, well, this is going to be hard.
Oh, sorry about that. I've got it now because I'm figuring this computer out. I'm figuring out not looking at chat. Every time I come on, I feel like I'm getting something else. Hopefully I'll have it down.
I'm also in the process of doing some changes to my computer, so I know what you're going through. Okay, so this is dealing with the question, why did you pack your tools? I think that, again, that's a credit to the channel that was asked. And Don answered, the reason I loaded my tools was they're very expensive. I can't afford to replace them. Makes you think, well, could you afford to replace Summer? But says I can't afford to replace them. Let me just deal with some of these super chats quickly. Huda Ali, why was Candace threatening about the timeline? I'm concerned about what could have happened in the car. Did he snap? I don't know. I kind of see a drowning scenario. I don't really see something beyond that, but it's difficult to say. I just think Candace failed her polygraph, or there were problems with the polygraph, and so she probably wanted to straighten that part out. She may have thought they are cross-referencing my polygraph with his statement, that's how they know I'm lying, or something like that. And so she figured she's got to get that part straight. I don't know whether I agree with focusing too much on Macbeth as a villain. I'm not saying that he's innocent or peers the driven snow, but it was Candace's responsibility to take care of her child more than anyone else, as far as I'm concerned, at the swimming hole. It's just my view. And then Bobby Cat, is it just me or have 3 generations spelled Candace wrong? That's a pretty funny point. Yeah. I mean, the Candaces I know are spelled differently, that's for sure. Yeah. But you also, I've seen Candace spelled Candace as well. So they are definitely different spellings.
Super phonetically. Us.
Yeah. Then he also made a contradiction after that. He was talking about the tools. At the same time now, he's being kind of asked, why on earth did you pack your tools? And then he said something like, you know what, I actually hoped Summer would be found. But that's a contradiction again, because earlier on it said the moment Candace called him, he knew it was an abduction. He said, hang up now and call the police. And then he also called the police. So, that tends to be a weird thing with these missing children cases is you're going to have to choose which narrative you believe. Did you know immediately what was going on? In which case you should have been very distressed and grieving and worried. Or did you have hope? In which case you also grieving and worried, but it's a bit different. You believe that there could be a good outcome despite there being perhaps a low chance of that. Another quote, she tried to tell law enforcement that, but I don't think law enforcement took it serious at all. It's haunted that poor lady ever since. She's crying, really emotional about that. Now, I've emphasized this because who's this really emotional person in the story? Who's this person who's haunted and crying and real emotional? the neighbor. Why isn't it Don or Candace? So here is some of the emotion you really want to see. Someone's really haunted by something bad that's happened. Someone's really crying and wanting to tell law enforcement, doing all the right things. But it's not Candace or Don, it's the neighbor. And of course, once again, this undermines law enforcement. Law enforcement are dumb. They didn't take it seriously. Law enforcement was crazy enough to think that Summer could have gotten lost in the woods. What on earth could have given them that idea when they were in the middle of the woods? And then the last thing I've written down, since we know nothing, we have to give it to God. Not to the cops. I think it's quite interesting, that statement from Don, since we know nothing. He's kind of talking about everybody in that. He's saying, you know nothing, I know nothing, the cops know nothing, everybody knows nothing. So let's give it to God. Now, do you think it suits whoever is responsible that somebody does that somebody says, we don't know anything, let's not really try and look for any information, we don't want to judge anyone, let's just give it over to God and God can sort this out. And I know some of you might be offended by that, but if you did do that, if law enforcement and everybody just said, God will, in God's wisdom, he will just sort this out. Do you think if that does happen, that helps the perpetrator or it hinders him? If the people that are looking for Summer stop looking, if the people that are judging stop judging and just say, let's give it to God, do you think you're going to have a different result? You might. I suppose one could try that, but that is not how law enforcement works, not how court cases operate. I know I'm kind of almost, yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly it. I know I'm sort of treading on a minefield here, but you can have faith and try and get information, inform yourself. After all, if you're a Christian, you read the Bible, you get the information that you need to know, your scriptures and so on. So there's also that verse in, I'm not sure if it's Hosea, about my children perish through lack of information, or through ignorance. My children perish because of that. Anyway, then he goes on and he says, we're in the last days. The world is going to get more evil. And so in a very weird way, at the very end of that whole thing, there's a little bit of a crossover to the Lori Vallow case. I don't know if you guys have seen, there's a book coming out on Lori Vallow by John Glatt called, I think it's called The Doomsday Mom. It's coming out in January next year, I think. But you kind of have the same thing of, I think it's different in a sense, but it's sort of, that needs to be the priority. Doomsday needs to be the priority. Things are happening right now that are important and critical, but doomsday kind of eclipses that. And so I don't know whether Don is trying to help people have their judgment eclipsed or help people have their thought process eclipsed by going to that area. But certainly that, I think, impeded the judgment of Lori Vallow. I don't know what you guys think about that. The whole
he
doomsday
actually says that we're close to the last days. He actually says that. He said that last night. He said we're close to the last days.
And I wonder whether he really believes that. I mean, I wonder if he really believes that. So I think quite an interesting question.
Sure. I have two other things that I wrote down before we connect to the verse, which I think is the most important part. And one of them is when he talks about definitely knowing that Summer was thrown in a car or whatever and taken out by car as fast as possible, as far away as possible. He then talks about there being one route out, I guess, leaving his property that has no cameras. He
Yeah.
said that there's one route out that goes out with no cameras. So I don't know. I just thought I wrote that down. And the other thing was, which is part of Bria's expertise, is as usual, we hear the dogs barking in the background quite a bit. So if there were screams and there were dogs, even in the woods down the street or something, you would think that these dogs would be like hearing that.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. The dogs barked, and then Don said, "It's nothing." It's like they're barking at nothing. And someone, I think in chat, said, "How do you know it's like dark? How do you know?" Kind of thing. But I thought that was just quite an interesting moment. Again, quite ironic. The dogs are barking. Oh no, the dogs are irrelevant to this.
Yeah, they're kind of going crazy.
Barking at nothing. Yeah. I just want to go through a couple of comments here. Cynthia Hendricks, Bible prophecies being fulfilled now. Kazona, everyone has cameras and ring doorbells. Well, in a rural setting, it's not quite as effective as, it's not quite as, not going to be quite as helpful. Jacqueline, the family would be immune to the sound of those dogs barking. That's an interesting point. I must say, when my dog barks, I notice it is not a frequent barker, but probably if you've got 20 dogs, you do start to tune it out. I can imagine that. Do you have dogs, Stephanie?
I don't have a dog. I have a cat, but I grew up having dogs. My mom, my sister, they have dogs that are like their fur babies. In fact, my sister's dog, actually, he's going to be 2. Her son was born on the same day as her dog, who was her first baby.
Whoa! He just put his paw on my.
There's nothing keyboard. Like the unconditional love of a dog.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
I was actually very torn between getting a dog and a cat. A cat is a great companion for an author because they just sit on your desk and they part of the furniture and so on. And they can kind of roam around, they can sort of be with you and run around, and it's, sort of okay. A dog I knew was going to be, in a way, higher maintenance, but also wanted I wanted a dog that's going to say, "Hey, get out of your chair," So you can't really take a cat for a walk, although there's someone near where I stay who actually does do that, who takes a cat for a walk.
Yeah.
So it is possible, but it's a little bit different, I guess. What kind of dog is Timmy? Is a miniature schnauzer. He definitely needs a shave. But I'm just waiting for it. We're expecting some very, very cold weather again this weekend. So after that, I've been saying it a few times. After that, he'll get his shave, I guess. Pauline Buckles, dogs and cats are great comfort. What do you say?
I said you made the right choice with Timmy.
I think
he brings you so much joy. I love seeing the two of you together.
Yeah. No, he is a good companion.
Did you write down anything about?
Quite a strong spirit. He, I know some human beings who are quite careful to disturb me when I'm working, and he's like, no. Now I want to go for a walk, and that is going to happen. So, and I mean it is important. My health has suffered from working as hard as I have, and I actually do need to make sure he gets his walks so that I get my walks, kind of thing. So he's actually keeping me not only healthy but sane. So I must say I do think that how those dogs were treated, if you talk about topics like neglect and all that kind of thing, the treatment of animals is often a big indicator. If you don't know anything, if you come to a scenario like this and you don't know anything, if you find out how the animals are treated, that can often be a very clear signal through everything, how the people are treated. Because often the way people treat animals, which is a vulnerable animal that can't verbalize, that's how they may treat vulnerable people around them. It happens quite often. Also, sometimes the maltreatment of animals. So you might, whoever you are, you might have a bone to pick with society, or a chip on your shoulder, or you whatever, frustrated with your lot in life, and it might spill over into being spiteful or cruel to animals, and then that becomes practice or becomes a precursor to treating people that way. So often it may start there, or that's the sign of a much larger malaise kind of thing. Let's just look at a couple of questions and comments. Stephanie, I don't know if you want to just pay attention to chat and just
Can I just
highlight a
read
couple of things.
Don's last words?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So he read part of the Bible verse, Isaiah chapter 66, verse 22. And this is kind of what he was reading from the Bible. Your name and your descendants will endure forever. If we honor the commandments, we'll go on forever. If we make it, we'll have a new heaven, a new earth. Look, and then it says something about the dead bodies of those who rebel against the God. And then after that, he put it in his own words. And this is how Don spoke freely of that verse. He said, this is really awesome because I will be able to be with my kids on this new earth that we'll rebuild. That's one heck of a promise from God right there. No matter what happens in this world, if we're killed or whatever, in the future, not too far off, we'll be able to be with our kids and our family and all of our loved ones. That's pretty awesome. I'm trying to keep those commandments. So that was the verse that he had picked out, and then the verse in his own words that he closed out his part of being on the panel with. And I just think that, like I said before, is his fairy tale. That's where his mind is.
Yeah, I think the answer is that, people say Don uses the church as a crutch. I think some of that is, what's the word, kind of manipulative, but I think some of it is genuine. I think some of that is how he is in self-denial, right? I think some of that is like that, and some of it isn't. I think it's quite interesting him saying, if someone is killed or whatever. I think you've also got to think about whatever you think about Don, whatever Don's sins. Does Don feel bad about what happened to Summer? I think the answer is yes. You might say, I don't care about that, but you might say the same about Chris Watts. Does Chris Watts care about Bella, for example? I think he was closer to Bella than perhaps anyone else in his family. Does he care about Bella? I think the answer is yes. Not that he absolutely doesn't care at all, that there is some caring there. We tend to forget that these are human beings. We don't like to acknowledge that, because if they're human, it means we're capable of the same thing, and actually we are. The only difference between one human being and another human being are their standards, to some extent their beliefs. But in terms of that, it's quite interesting the way that he did say, if someone is killed or whatever. Also, if someone dies, it's not such a big deal because they're just somewhere else. They haven't died and they're deprived of their life for the rest of their lives, and that's a great tragedy. No, they're just somewhere else. It's like someone going out of this room into another room. well, it's easy to be economical, and it's really the wrong word, just sort of minimizing that if it's not you. If you had to be deprived of your life and someone said, it's not a big deal, you're just somewhere else, you hearing that would probably say, no, I wanted my life. I wanted to be alive. I was 5 years old. That little boy in the pool in Finland, he struggled really mightily because he didn't want to drown. He struggled a really, really long time because he was desperate not to drown. And someone else, like his mother, who was sitting in the sauna at that time, may have said, you know what, you'll be okay. Ultimately, it's not really a big deal. You'll be okay. You're not that person. And so it's quite easy to take the voice of another person and make it into not a big deal. It's a big deal if you're that person. I must say, to me, the idea of one, you talk about true crime, the idea of one person dying always feels like it's one too many. And it gets quite easy when you deal with true crime to be like, okay, it's the Suzanne Morphew case. Oh, okay, now it's this case, that case, that case. In every one of these cases, it was someone who wanted to be alive who lost their life. And now, how long is it taking to find out what really happened? Because the person closest to that person is the suspect, and they are telling a story that we suspect is not true, right? And one of the ways that you seriously approach this is you say, life is precious. And part of what makes it precious is defending that person's life in their absence, in the pursuit of justice. That is how we acknowledge that life is precious. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh my God, you're gonna make me cry.
Okay. Hold up to me.
Every case it's not just the next case, or I'm not interested in that case, or this. So many people connected and so many people losing their lives. And I did write down, because what I've been doing when you've been speaking, because I know I still interrupted, but I'm trying to be better with that. And I do think there is a little bit of a time delay or something, but I've been writing down my thoughts so I don't forget them. And I had just written that for Don, I think that he is showing sincerity with putting that verse in his own words. He's also finding justification in it, as well as peace of mind. So I think
it can be a combination. Yeah. Stephanie, when I write books, that whole process of getting into the victim's shoes is slowed down. You can spend a whole day writing about one particular scene, and when you write about true crime the way that I do, and you retrace the timeline, you, in your mind as the writer, you're kind of thinking, that is the last time she had a meal. That's the last time that she's going to talk to that person ever in her life. That's the last time she drove a car. And past all of these milestones that are never, ever going to be experienced ever again. That's the last time she wore that shirt or those shoes. That's the last time she drove that road, whatever. That's the last message she sent. That's the last thing she said. That's the last thing she saw. On and on and on. And as you go down that timeline, you just get that horrible sense of, because you know what the outcome is, of fatality, of something that is absolutely inevitable. And it's quite hard to bear when it's someone else's life. It must be terrible when you're the person with someone's hands by your neck or whatever, and that's why I say, when you go into one of these cases, when you write a book about it, that one person's life it feels like it's too much. That one life lost feels like it's too much. And as I said, it feels like you can sometimes get the sense that, oh, it's now this case or that case. No, this person had this excruciating desire to live, and to live as fully as they could, and it was taken away from them. and someone else is justifying or kind of, interfering with what all of that meant. S.M. Kowalinsky said this about you, Stephanie. He said, you made a great point about Candace and Don being in conflict versus bonded in crisis. That is an excellent point. If you look at other couples like the McCanns and the doctors, Jerry and Kate McCann, and also the Ramseys, they were bonded in crisis, I think. There may have been conflict, but I think they managed to get through that. I think there was a lot of conflict before this happened. And the question is, what's the outcome going to be? Whatever happens in terms of the investigation, can you imagine if Candace and Don split up? How are you going to then control the narrative? If they split up, who's going to, is someone going to be thrown under the bus eventually? Is that what law enforcement are counting on? S.M. Kowalinsky goes on to say he blames and may turn on her. Don does seem to be the more blaming kind. I don't know, just get the sense that he's meaner. Candace, classical Latin spelling. Okay. And then there's another one from KP Baz. Thanks a lot. Thank you for your focused chats. FAS spot on. The nurse was amazing. You really touch on the bigger picture. Okay, thanks a lot. She did send through some more information. I just haven't had time to actually get through it. So maybe we will. Yeah. I'm sorry I almost brought you to tears, Stephanie.
Well, what you say just resonates. You speak and it's like poetry of truth. That's what it feels like. And every case that I've seen and heard you work on, I can feel that you care. And that's why this channel matters so much to so many people, because you genuinely bring that. You genuinely care. And you said something the other day. I've written many books on true crime cases, but in reality, I could spend my whole life writing about one case.
There's a whole life, and it's a whole life that no matter how hard we work, we actually can't get to know everything about a person. We can get to know a lot about them, but But what I also want to have happen is we very good at figuring these cases out, and we don't get misled, and we critical thinkers and all that. That's great. But I also want us to take from that journey that we turn around at some point and we experience life. We experience what it means to be alive. We experience the abundance of life. We experience the reality that life is precious and that we enjoy that flowering of life within us. That sort of the fact that it's precious, you need to enjoy those moments, And so part of, I think, the true crime journey is that you see some of the darkness, and that makes you appreciate the light so much more. But the important thing is you go back into the light. You need to go back into the light, feel the sunshine, feel the grass under your feet. And I'm speaking to someone who's just come from the beach. You were at the beach and you were, and that's important. It's important to also have those experiences. Somebody said, introspection never ends. So a lot of what true crime is, a lot of what analysis is, you can never totally have 100% justice. 100% justice would be bringing that person back into existence. Having the events reversed completely. That would be, but so you experience that side of things. But what you want to do is bring it to you want something positive to come out of that whole journey. And so it's not just introspection to infinity. It's introspection and analysis and so on. And then at a point you come out of that. So if you are looking into the Summer Wells case, you might acknowledge who you were as a little child, or what happened to you as a 5-year-old or whatever. But you can also be, that inner child can awaken as you as an adult, and you can honor that in your life now. Do play games, do things that maybe you last did as a child, ride a bicycle, whatever, swim and enjoy swimming. I'm just saying, we go into a dark place, but it's important to come back out. That's also why I say in September, I'm going to be doing that. In September, I'm going to be moving, I'm going to be exercising, I'm going to be swimming.
It's your turn.
Yeah. So you do the work and you go into those places, but you must also come out. You must also, on the other side of death is life as well. So I hope people that follow true crime rocket science aren't only not inspired, but sort of educated in ways to think, but also in ways to live. That you're also edified and inspired to come out of the darkness, let me put it that way.
I'm going to look at chat now. So I'm going to be looking down. But this is my time reserved to look at chat. And I just wanted to say thank you all for being here with us. Nick, thank you for staying up with me much longer than you had hoped, I think. But I appreciate it.
I must have enjoyed it because it hasn't felt like 2 hours.
No.
So yeah, it's been a good chat.
But I am trying to improve and be more conscious of myself each live that we have. So just like we learn and grow in true crime, through this experience, we can learn and grow and get better too. And I want to see, I'm not sure who the mods are. I've seen Sharon in here. I don't know if she's by herself, but girl, if you are, you're amazing. You're amazing.
Sharon's here.
Oh my gosh, this is there's a lot of people in chat, and she's holding down the fort. She's lovely. So thank you, Sharon, and thank you all for staying tuned and being patient with me.
KK Heflin, the only thing necessary for the existence of evil is for good men to do nothing. Thanks for doing something, Nick. Thanks a lot for that comment. That is so true. That is so true. That is something that is constantly testing us, I think, in our own lives, in our everyday lives, that sort of situation. Raymond is, thanks a lot. Someone said, love the marathon today. I just want to say, I don't know if I caught all the super chats, so if I missed yours, I'm sorry. I see there's one from Lauren Noel Hall. She says, I've been wondering if Grandis was entered into the witness protection program. I think she knows all up until where okay. So not sure if that's the case. Not sure if that's the case. I guess it's possible. It's possible.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Pancakes, thanks a lot. Pancakes.
And I think it was good that you posted that I was going to be on the live with you, so people that might not want to tune in can skip this one. And people that want to watch can join in.
Well, in your, which should be quite a big boost to you, is I think in yesterday's live, there were, I think, 1,500 people on, and in today's, I think, well, there's even more than that right now. I think there were 2,000 at some point. So you're actually bringing in a bigger audience than when it's just me. So you've got your own sort of super fans, I think. Thanks, Daphne.
Well, I'm super fans of you, and I'm super fans of many of the subscribers. I love that I get to know them by their names and their pictures.
Someone said Patty Cake says Don changed his Facebook status to single. trouble in paradise ? That's interesting if it's true. At the end of all of my videos, there's a Facebook screen grab in the credits where it sort of says, which shows Candace's sort of Facebook things, and where it says relationship, it says it's complicated. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah.
Someone said, we love you, Stephanie. Raymond says we love you. What happens with this kind of thing is there's always someone who is really annoyed and they don't like something, and that's the comment that you remember. So the one person that's got a really hurtful thing you tend to remember, and that tends to unfortunately ruin a lot of the good feelings that you have, from everybody else.
If I had taken any of the comments that I first got seriously, I wouldn't have come back on again and then again. So.
Yeah, I didn't really want to come on YouTube. I certainly didn't want to come on like this. But you kind of got to have a thick skin. And I actually came across a very ugly message directed directly at me, my name being used, and the criticism of me was, I thought, quite unfounded. I suppose anyone would, but it was just saying about all the errors that I make, and well, I was actually just saying, in my opinion, this and this and this, and I would still say the same thing again, but it was someone who really just wants to take a pot shot at you. And that's one of the ugly things about YouTube, is that because your face is now out there, someone can, they don't give you the right of reply. They don't call you up and say, what do you think about this? They put it somewhere else, and so it's not very nice. But you've kind of got to weigh that up, that negative side against, are you contributing? Are you making a contribution in general? And I think that it helps to think about it that way.
Yeah.
Denise Pennington, yeah.
I was going to say, I'm much more comfortable in the chat or on a live stream with an avatar and not me. But because you come on face to face, I only think that it's right that I bring myself face to face, and it's getting a little bit easier.
What I appreciate with you is that you provide your real name, and that's quite rare kind of on YouTube and on social media. A lot of people provide avatars and they can be quite nasty or whatever. When you provide your real name and your face, you've kind of got to behave, and you've got to be real. And that's what we want. We want to be authentic. And of course, if one person's got a real avatar that's their real name and another one doesn't, it's a bit unfair. It sometimes feels a bit unfair. I sometimes feel like they're people I'm quite close to, but I don't actually know their real names, and that interferes with that. I'm talking about people that you know who they are on social media, but you don't actually know their name. And then you sometimes forget their names. You know who the person is, but you sort of forget it. Don, okay. Just look at a couple of comments. Susie Razor says you're doing an amazing job, Stephanie. Beverly says Jeannie saved this case of missing Summer.
Jeannie's strong.
Leonie says you can be proud of the work you do. Thanks, Leonie. My mom's name was Leonie, by the way. Thanks, Sharon. Bearded Dragon Mom.
Hi, Anna. Hi,
Someone
Kelly.
says my real name is Rebecca Cole. Thanks for that. Thanks.
It is more personal. But then again, YouTube can be scary to share too much. Now everybody knows my full name because I use my first and my last name. In hindsight, I'm like, I probably shouldn't have done that. But at the same time, I I hope that the way I present myself isn't in a way that is going to offend anybody to like,
Yeah.
I don't know, come after me
I
or
think
something. Maybe I'm
I
just
think you
foolish.
can come on. I think you can come on YouTube with an attitude, and then you can reap a whirlwind. I think you've got to also try and be nice. It helps if you are nice, but if you're very prickly and you're very reactionary, if someone says something nasty and you've got to say something nasty back, it can be not nice. So, someone says, "What book are you the most proud of?"
What was the
Probably a book
question?
that someone said, "What book are you the most proud of?" Um, it's quite a difficult question. I've written a fiction book that I'm quite proud of that isn't really available. And I'm also very conflicted about it. But in terms of true crime, I really think Slaughter was a very hard book to write, but a very important book. I came across some really things that changed my opinion completely about true crime when I wrote Slaughter. Incel was also, I thought, a very important book that sort of carries on from that. I think that the three books that I care the most about are some of the most overlooked in my pantheon, which is a bit humbling. So the one is Slaughter, the other one is Incel. Slaughter is a really long book, really, really hard work. That book nearly killed me writing, just because those crime scenes are so complicated. And then the murder of Vincent van Gogh means a lot to me. I mean, I did go to the Netherlands, and I think I've made a contribution in the terms of art history. Time will tell, but that book kind of made me quite aware of: am I Vincent van Gogh? Is that going to be my fate? Am I going to choose life? Is my art going to edify me? Is my art going to be understood? Whatever. And so I learned quite a lot through writing about that. And also, I think Van Gogh's biggest failure was that he didn't make himself better understood amongst the people around him. I think he wrote pretty good letters and his brother understood him, but he probably needed to be better in terms of the social game. And so I think that is part of the thing we need to learn in life, is to learn to know yourself, but also where you fit in the society. Bobby Cat says, "Stephanie, you rock." Thanks, Bobby. Gigi Jardine, thanks for being you. Okay. I think should we stay on another 5 minutes till that's 2 hours 20? Just deal with the
Sure.
last couple of chats. Okay.
And I can tuck my little one in bed.
Okay. Pauline says, I think she's saying that's her favorite book, All Who Wander Are Not Lost, or maybe not. Suzanne H., I'm going to read your Van Gogh. The Kindle, I would advise the Kindle over the paperback, but it's your choice. Julie Wilburn, hi from Virginia, well, just joined us. Okay, Life with Jimmy, do you think Summer was taken? No, I don't. What do you think about that, Stephanie?
I don't think she was taken as payment. No, I don't. I think
Yeah.
the history of what we know, and I said it and you said it, the accident waiting to happen is the key. And I really think that Summer saved her brothers.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting point. Is that
situation was an accident waiting to happen.
Maybe her brothers' lives are going to improve in ways that they wouldn't have, you know.
And it's got to be saying something that the children are not now back. They're with them. They're still not home.
Teresa Payne says, any books you regret? I've written a lot of books, and there's some books that just never went anywhere, and you think, wow, I spent a month writing that. I could have done something else with that month of my life. I think every book you write does sharpen your skills as an author, even if it's a terrible book. But like I wrote On Writing for Kindle. To sort of, there's an excellent book by Stephen King called On Writing, and I wrote On Writing for Kindle. And I won't go into too much detail, but I kind of wish I didn't write that book, just because it's been overlooked, and I could have done something with the time that it took to write that book. So there are about 5 books like that where I really wish I'd, I don't know, gone to the beach or something instead of writing a book is an incredible amount of work. So a book that it's not a guarantee that your book's going to triumph or that it's going to get traction. So when it doesn't, it does feel like a punch in the gut, even years later. All the time you spent on that, all the editing, all the sleep that you missed, could have been lived, kind of thing,
One of my most memorable experiences was on Patreon, you taking us step by step as you wrote Post-Truth. That was a memorable experience for me. That was an inside look at your mindset, your work ethic, your heart, and then to share that with us was just amazing. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, it definitely, there's an aspect, I think you've got to do it the right way, but there's an aspect where if you're writing and you can share certain things with your readers, it helps you, motivate you with the writing. They are on board, they might, so you can kind of have a joint journey, but ultimately writing is a very lonely process. No one can sit down and do it other than you. You can't have someone type it out. Well, I suppose you could, but basically you've got to, and it's just a very lonely thing. But there's a mental side to it that is it's incredible. It's incredible the places you can go in your mind, in your sort of mental palace. And that's something that I hope I've taught my readers, is that you can really build your mental muscles through thinking in different ways. And true crime, I'm actually not the hugest fan of true crime, but I do think you can learn how to think about certain things critically through true crime and apply it to your life, your personal life, certain problems, in a way that can make you a very effective person. That I think is quite useful. Someone says, if you're a good storyteller, does that help in sitting down to write a book? Definitely does help if you're a good storyteller. One thing I've never really had problems with is, what do you call it? Writer's block. I don't really have that problem. My brain is constantly running. My problem is shutting it off.
Yeah, your Rebecca Zahouse series was amazing.
Thanks for that. Yeah, the second book was really interesting, how it just almost created itself. I'm kind of almost like a spectator going, wow, that's happening, kind of thing.
I shared with you, I'm going on a journey now. I'm starting back at your very first book you wrote, and I'm going to read through in the order that you wrote them, not only to see your development of self as a writer, but also just to go on this journey. I don't know. I just want to do it. I don't know. I'm excited. I'm reading in her own words. It's shorter. It's an ebook, so I'm almost done with it already. But it is so good.
Oh, is it? Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
That particular book started off, it was supposed to be a magazine article, so it wasn't actually supposed to be a book. But the whole Oscar trial, that is what started me off in true crime. And I have very mixed feelings about that whole trial. I'm very frustrated about certain things. There's a mixture of feeling proud and happy and that it was successful, but also heartbroken and angry and bitter and really upset about certain other things that happened. So there's a lot of emotion that went into the Oscar Pistorius trial, and yeah, I'm pretty glad. I was pretty glad when that was over. The fact that there was a finish line to that, because that was a case I really needed. Eventually, felt I needed to get away from. Felt like this black hole eventually. But fortunately, that case ended on a positive note in terms of justice. But that case really showed me how hard it can be to get justice when the world's watching, when you've got the Oscar Pistorius case seems like the most simple case of all the cases I've ever dealt with. In terms of Jodi Arias, in terms of Chris Watts, just seems like the most simple case in the world. There's no someone that shoots someone else in their own home. Well, what else? Who else is responsible? And you saw what a complex case that turned into.
And to learn that Riva was, she was so smart and so beautiful, and she studied law to be a lawyer to find justice for people. I know we're getting off topic now, but
I know we spoke about earlier the thing about one life lost, but I can tell you, Riva Steenkamp, the way she lost her life, you really feel it. You really feel. I think it's a little bit different because I got access to the autopsy photos. I got really close to her in a lot of different ways, and I don't know. It's you can just feel what she experienced, and it's it's you sort of feel like that's one life too many lost, and then you go on to the next case kind of thing, and it's you look at her life. What a beautiful young woman she was, and at the age that she was just coming into her own. If you take Summerwell's 5 years old. She's about to kind of become conscious of self in a way. She's about to start school. She's about to start her life. But some people struggle in their lives in different ways, and Riva was about to arrive. But as an adult, and then to have your life taken away at that point. And that's why I just say, as the true crime community, you can pay attention to this, and we should. We can fight for justice, and we must, but you must also find your life, a way to living your life as well at the end of that. That should be, all the grief and all the tears should amount to something that's the opposite of that in your life. It should be feeling the sunshine, having some experience. And that's something I've been challenging myself to do, is to travel somewhere, not just to have a barbecue. You actually travel to another country, you have an adventure somewhere, and that is how you live a greater life. I think one that needs to challenge yourself to do that. Not just live a good life, but try and live the best life,
And the last thing I'll say on one of your books, and it relates to what you were saying about the value of every life, is you had shared that when you wrote Slaughter, that how difficult it was for you to write, because you didn't want the victims to just be a number. You wanted to do the victims in a group, group murder justice. And you shared how difficult that was, but how focused you tried to be on doing that.
Yeah, I think in a mass shooting scenario, it's also easy to say there were 17 victims or there were so many victims. It's different when you're taking the approach of that I have in true crime, where you say, what exactly happened here from the victim's perspective? And now you've got 17 victims. So you've got to get to know the victim, you've got to follow the victim's movements. And it's not just in one shooting, it's times, I think there may be 8 or 9 shootings in there. It was a heck of a lot of work, but also incredibly draining to go into that place. But what I did learn was that anal sadistic link. I actually meant to talk about anality in yesterday's live. I just ran out of time. I actually went to the trouble to find that quote from Ernest Becker talking about. I went through 3 books just to find the quote, and then I eventually found it. I didn't actually end up referring to it in the live, but it's that quote where he talks about what an anal person is, a very mechanical person that chooses things and numbers and control and certain things. They don't choose life, and we need to not be that ourselves. We need to choose life, kind of thing. I will talk about that at some point. I just want to choose the right opportunity because it's an important theme. But there's a link between being anal and being sadistic. Someone who is very OCD, so someone who's on you might be a psychologist might say OCD is not being anal. But what I'm telling you is, if you sufficiently OCD about a lot of things, you are sort of caught up in that anality, that sort of mindless place where you caught up in mechanical things, right?
Just going through the
I think there's something
motions.
anal about writing books, to be honest, to be tapping on the keyboard, you know, on and on and on and on. I try and find a way to, through all of that there's something positive at the end of it. So you try and find something in that creative process that transforms you or transforms your story. But if there's enough anality, it actually translates to sadism. In other words, a person who's sadistic, a person who's cruel, a person who has got that meanness in them, it often comes, I think, from anality. And I wonder whether you can't apply that to drug addiction. If you're on drugs all the time, you're not actually alive. You're in an anal way experiencing life through these substances, right? You can't have an experience of life, so you've got to have an experience through chemicals. And to the extent that that overtakes your life, you may become sadistic because you're not getting a genuine experience of life. And that's why I say it's so important to have that genuine experience of life. Only you can answer the question, what is that genuine experience of life? I've written a lot of books, and the question I would ask myself is, having done that, what do you want to do now? Do you want to keep doing it? Do you want to keep doing that? Part of the answer is yes, I do want to. But I also think it's important that I do something beyond that. Do I want to write another 100 books? No. I really would like to travel to the States and to visit some of the places I've written about and beyond. So if I go to Boulder, you know, visit the John Benet Ramsey home and then go skiing in the mountains, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I think we're about done.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for letting me share what I took away from Don's latest statements.
Yeah,
And
thank you for your
so
notes.
many of you for sharing your
It's
time
amazing
with
how
us.
different people pick up on specifics. You know, it's just interesting how we absorb different things, and that's why it's good to have more than one person, you know, looking at the same thing. I'm going to hold Timmy up so you can see him, so you can wave goodbye. There he is. He's been having a nice little nap in the cradle of my arms. So I must say, Timmy reminds me of like the doggy approach to being happy with your life. It's like going for a walk, it's sniffing around. It doesn't have to be very complicated. Just get out there,
Life
the doggy
lessons
approach.
from Timmy.
Yeah. I just want to thank everyone in chat, everyone for being here. I see there's still 1,200 people, even though we've waffled on the last couple of minutes about things beyond the Summer Wells case. So thanks for sticking with us. Thank you to Sharon, and I'm not sure if there are other mods around, but thank you for everything. Thanks for all the super chats. What else can I tell you that's coming up? I am working on a Madeleine McCann video that I think is really important. The reason it's taken quite long is I'm trying to say exactly what I want to say in a way that is going to be quite compelling. So I've been working on this for a little while. That'll probably come out tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
I have been saying this for a little while. My coverage of the Summer Wells case is probably going to lessen to some extent. I want my coverage to be based on the news and information, and if that's not coming out, there's going to be less coverage. It's just going to be how it goes. I will probably try and cover the Morphew case tomorrow as well. And I just want to also apologize to my patrons. I started the Treachery book on Casey Anthony, the audio book. Because I've been so swamped with work, I've not put up a chapter for a couple of days. I'm going to be resuming that. So Treachery is going to continue, and I'll probably also be doing the John Benet Ramsey analysis of the Dateline documentary on Tuesday. So that's all coming up on Patreon. So thanks everyone for being here. Stephanie, I'm so glad that you got that link, because I was like, this is crazy. I'm sure I sent it to you.
Rest assured, it was me. Nothing on your end, and I got this now.
Yeah, it's just if I'm on this side, I've got two desks and two workstations. If I'm on this side, I can't access certain things that I can access there. So that's how it goes.
I heard you say, "Oh, I'm going to give her 5 more minutes." I said, "Let me get on here. Let me get on. Let me figure it out."
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go now.
What time is it there?
It's 9:18, but I hear rustling, so I can hear my boys coming up to bed.
Okay, I'm going to let you go. It's almost 3:20 in the morning here. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't know when you sleep. I really don't.
Yeah, my sleep patterns are pretty messed up at the moment, but that's why September is supposed to address that. So we'll see. Good night, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for being here. See you guys next time. Thanks, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
See you again.
Ciao.
Take care. Take care. Sleep well, huh?